So, welcome back to Level Capital Club, the media dedicated to private markets and family offices. In today's interview, we're going to be discussing SMEs and the growing momentum from institutional investors into that asset class, including institutional investment in SMEs. What's been driving this growth? How can SME owners optimize their capital raising processes? The defense industry becoming a new and emerging asset class, and also the current state of the US with its First America policy under the new administration. For this, we've got the great pleasure and honor to welcome Margaret Gonzalez. Margaret is the founder and CEO of Capital Variation, a strategic capital advisor for SMEs and private equity firms as well. Margaret, it's great to have you on. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me here. It's a pleasure to be back in the city where Capital Variation was born, and back in 2019. So I'm super excited to be here right after our event, which was taking place in this hotel a few days ago
In London.
in London. Yes, exactly. So I'm really excited to be here. Um, this year has been super exciting for Capital Variation in terms of growth, in terms of expansion, in terms of the industries that we've been, present and obviously um, engaging with. So I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, no, I've kind of witnessed the progression of Capital Variation. I think we first met about 3 years ago. And since then, it's been growing a lot. So I think for audience, it'd be helpful to have a bit of an understanding of how you came to create Capital Variation, really the value proposition that you offer for SMEs and people that are looking to raise capital and exactly what you're doing.
Yes, 100%. So the reason why I am here in London today is because, as I mentioned, I opened Capital Variation back in 2019, and I saw a lot of discrepancies within the financial sector, especially for smaller entrepreneurs, smaller firms that were looking to grow and fundraise firms for. So often, many founders have the capacity, have the potential, and have the ability to create firms, but very little firms grow and reach the levels that they could achieve because they don't have the right funding and the right guidance and the right ecosystems where they can grow and embed their products. So that's why I created Capital Variation. It's a simple story. I founded Capital Variation to direct private and public capital into companies that were going to change the course of humanity for good. And there were not enough companies that were supporting them. So I said the only way that I can do that is if I create my own platform. And that's what I did. So I've been on the road for more than 7 years building Capital Variation. It has been a journey. I love it because I can get to travel around the world, work with incredible founders and investors that are, you know, trailblazers that care about the environment, care about the world. And I have a good feeling to catch both sides, to engage with the right founders and the right companies and identify the investors that were going to propel them for growth, economic support, and also to be part of the next generation of, great companies.
So really, if I understand, helping entrepreneurs and founders throughout the whole capital raising process from actually identifying their needs, optimizing the capital structure to actually going and fundraising. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So we typically engage with companies that are over Series A. So they already have idea, they have an MVP, they have customers, and they're looking to grow. And that's why we created Capital Variation in London and Dubai and also in the US. So whatever they were looking to grow, we can actually help them and assist with their expansion plans. And our platform is over 20,000 investors now globally, between single family offices to pensions, banks, VCs, and sovereign wealth funds. So we can help with the whole process from company origination to pre-IPOs.
And the core focus of capital variation really has been the SME space. It's a space that's been growing a lot, both in terms of number of SMEs being created, but also the traction it's gotten from institution. And when I mention institution, I also mention family offices over the past couple of years. So really, what are the key factors that have been driving this growth in the space?
I think what's most important is to count with people that could follow your vision and your goals. So I think key part of what part of our success in capital variation is because we have been able to really focus our efforts on companies and investors that care about growing to change the world for good, and to also, like, be collaborated and be really there for, companies that want to grow. So I think, there's a combination of everything. You have to have a good team within my organization. You have to also engage with companies that do want to grow and I want to be coachable and be international. And SMEs, if you engage with really good entrepreneurs and investors, I think, the sky's the limit, right? And that's what we can provide. Capital Variation has so much leverage in terms of investor network, not only on the private side, but also on the public side and governmental side. And we're tirelessly working every single day to create those partnerships so everyone can flourish and we can support everyone.
And from an LP perspective, I think we've seen LPs increasing allocation to SMEs, instead of maybe having more of a large cap strategy. How do you explain this growth, and really what are the trends that we're seeing in today's cycle, which is not an easy cycle to say the least?
I mean, I've seen it all. I think, when I started Capital Variation, I was thinking, okay, we're going to this route for like impact ESG, which was very much of a alignment with what I believe. And obviously, now that the president's Trump like decided to, it's nothing ESG or not impact or, so we're always trying to embed the vision of the company, but at the same time, we need to look what it's important right now, what's according to geopolitical issues, according to like uncertainty, according to, there are so many angles right now. But I think, protecting, preserving, and originating well, it's going to be the norm for the next couple of years. And so that's why I decided to expand the company in the US, right? So yeah, SMEs are changing the narrative in terms of, anybody could build something out of nowhere and you can be acquired to the next Anthropic or OpenAI, and these large companies and organizations who have the leverage, the liquidity to invest in your companies because the product is needed. So AI, defense, there are certain industries that will pivot within the next 3 years, and there is not much that you need rather than like a good sponsor. So that's why we're supporting a lot of like defense companies that are protecting, okay, that are not distracting, is protecting the, you know countries, communities, and that are helping to protect the next generation of companies and communities out there.
Yeah, defense is a subject that we're going to touch on later in this interview, but I want to get your thought because I know you're very active in the pre-IPO space. IPOs in general, I mean, they are pretty much all-time low when you look at, since 2022, 2023, 2025 didn't look better. So I want to get your thought really on, the current IPO market. You're now based in New York, in the center of IPOs. What are you seeing for this next year onward?
So yeah, that's the reason where we established capital variation right before. I think to this year it's going to be an aggressive, like, pre-IPO. SPACs also are going to be a big norm right now. So pre-IPOs has been in my radar since many years, and now that we're literally opposite the stock exchange, our office is in 40 Wall Street at the Trump Building. I get to see everything from my window, so I know exactly who's going to list, who's going to do whatever. And we have created really good partnerships with some of the most largest liquidity providers that have ever existed in the stock exchange. Um, they're our partners, so we can list it pretty much any company that wants to go public. And I think a big drive of that is that there is not only the power of AI and the power of outreach and the power of technology, but there is also a lot of companies that have very much legacy software and hardware that needs to grow exponentially, and there is the need for that, and there is also the software to do that. So if you combine them both, hardware, software, and the potential of AI and the potential of that industry, together with like hundreds of millions of dollars that are available in the market. If you catch a good opportunity, you can become a billionaire.
You can go really fast.
Yeah, you can grow really, really fast. And I've seen a lot of examples last year. So this year we're really aggressively looking for companies that we do believe that are going to be the next unicorns. And we're working very closely with some of them at the moment. So very exciting times.
You briefly touched on SPAC. SPAC is something that we heard a lot, back in 2022. I think driven by a lot of retail investors. Do you see SPAC making a comeback at some point, or is that just a trend that's been kind of fading away?
So statistically speaking, have a look at the stats very lately on, but like, close partners that I work with in New York City, a few SPACs have done and have materialized last month, and it's only February, almost there. So I think doing it the right way and with, like I said, the right companies, I think it could be a trend that could be notable and could be very much used for actually for us as a company. We are working with a few different companies that are looking at SPAC deals right now in order to list. So we're excited, and we think with the right companies and the right advisors, I think this is something that could, propel a lot of growth this year. But it's early still, so to say, right?
Switching gear a bit to the defense industry, I mean, I think with healthcare, it's really been the two biggest topics that we've seen a lot of LPs kind of want to start allocating in the space, but it's a space that's still very much misunderstood, at least maybe not understood as a very precise level in a way. So, how active are you in the space, and really, how do you see the space in general?
Yeah. So for capital variation has all our sole purpose and goals and vision has always been economic growth, supporting, preserve, increase wealth, and do good for humanity. So I've never been a fan of you know doing finance in the wrong way. So that's why we're utilizing defense for good, meaning protecting. And so we're engaging with a couple of Swiss companies that are providing solutions to protect countries and infrastructure and really key legacy buildings that are in threat. We've seen what happened with Ukraine. You've seen what happened with Russia. I mean, I generalize because everyone suffered when war happened, and it's not fun for anybody, right? So I feel sorry about that. So we really care about how we can help, and so we identified a couple of companies that we're currently working for that are looking for fundraising, but not only that, but are looking to grow in the United States, that are protective of countries. And we're pro growth, and we're seeing a lot of opportunities from Trump, for example, to support those companies. But I'm also seeing a lot of companies in Europe and the Middle East that want to grow and be in the United States. So I think if you look at with the lens of economic growth as opposed to just like negativity or anything else, there is a lot to be done in a positive way, and that's what we're always going to be driving our force towards.
I think defense is a sector where you do rely on a limited number of customers, which tend to be quite a lot of governments. Um, in the news, there's been a lot of governments saying that they want to increase their budget for defense, and that's been a trend that's been seen those past couple of months. But there's always a big gap between what governments say and what they actually do. So, based on you working with companies, do you actually see government actively spending money in the space, or is that just kind of trending news?
No, no, no. For us, one of the reasons why we're in the U.S. and we're actively engaging with like countries, different countries around Europe in Asia. There is, as you know, a large budget in the U.S., 1.5 trillion more or less, that is allocated towards companies that have old cycles, but at the same time, Europe has always been very strict with their rules with NATO and everything, but it's also like they put in a lot of like thought on this. Japan, for example, they're kind of like re-engage, like how they can get back to, where they were in the past. Poland, I've seen a lot of Polish companies, and the government is also very actively engaging. And it's because, it's geopolitical issues right now, it's on the rise. So you need to protect your countries. And I think governments have seen that they need to pay attention to this. And so we're in the space for the right way, right? For the right reason.
And talking from a valuation perspective, I think there's big growth potential, and that it's kind of priced in within valuation. I mean, what's your thoughts on the current valuation in the space today?
So I think in terms of defense, I think was still really good in terms of European companies.
Right.
That's why we're working with European companies and to bring them to the states because it's a good mixture for what we've been doing, for example. So lots of companies that have really good valuations that could really become like unicorns in the United States, and entering now will be amazing. Of course, valuations in the US are always going to be higher because the market is higher, right? So if they have larger, ecosystems to cater for, valuations are going to be naturally higher. So that's why we're doing what we're doing. The reason why we are here today in London is because we've conducted a gathering last week where we presented some of those companies that are quite good in terms of valuations, and we're helping them towards fundraising efforts, but at the same time, we're going to list them in the United States very soon. So I think entering right now would be a very good opportunity. And there's other markets who are very much willing to look at companies in the US. They don't mind paying the premium on these valuations. But if they can enter, we can provide a solution for them as well, if necessary.
You mentioned European companies looking to get into the US, maybe relocate to the US, have a bigger footprint in the US. And I think it's a trend that we've been seeing those last couple of months with the new administration. So we've had going into the political aspect, because within Level Capital Club, what we try is to get a good understanding of how administration have an impact from an economic perspective. With Trump's kind of first America policy, you've actually relocated to the US. It's been one of the main driver leading to that. But so what have you seen changing, and how just the economy in general in the US is doing?
I mean, I've been in the business for more than 10 years in the fundraising business. I would talk from that perspective. And so for us, building a company in the in London, and then subsequently growing and opening another institution in the Middle East, and then also in Singapore, and then seeing how the growth of capital variation has played into who we are now as a company. I took the lead to go to Wall Street because I just feel that right now we have a lot of opportunities. And we talk about many different things that are not related to economic growth, which of course I'm not, I don't support because of X, Y reasons, and everyone has a different opinion of, presidential affairs. And I don't want to touch base on that right now. But for us, the biggest growth and the biggest drive for us to be in the United States is because there are so many grants right now for European companies who want to establish in the US. I personally got some grants as well, but embedding my company and creating one there. But there is also lots of initiatives for manufacturing facilities that will be um, relocated to the United States. They don't need to relocate completely, but they can just be present there. And so we're working at the moment to build one manufacturing facility for capital variation to deploy some of that hard work and that company that we want to support. So I think, you know, if you're a capitalist, which I am, I also care about the world, but I'm a capitalist, foremost, because when I was younger, I'd suffer a lot with that, and I don't want to see that anymore or ever in my life. But I think when you have the opportunity, you should grab it, and then you should take advantage of that. And being able to identify, the opportunities at the right time, you getting in and out, or sometimes just like looking at long term as well. I think you have to be, you have to balance your kind of chronological span of your company and the opportunities, and be smart about the solutions and the opportunities that countries give you.
And I mean, I think the US has always been attracting a lot of capital, a lot of companies, but have you seen a growing momentum with the new administration in place for maybe European companies that are increasingly looking at relocating to the US?
Yeah, it's 100%. Otherwise, we wouldn't be there. So we've got a lot of let's say conversations in the last couple of months, which convert into partnerships. We convert into investments very fast compared to Europe or the Middle East, when we tend to be a little more, um, I'll say, more conservative. We take time. We take a little bit more time to decide what we want to do, etc. The Middle East also is great, but I've never experienced something like I've experienced in the US. The level of effectiveness and like positioning and being super, yeah, it's the right time, I think.
Right.
And for us has been great, and we hope that we can also help some of the family offices that see the vision, and then obviously convert it into something that they've ever wanted, become billion-dollar companies, and that's what we want to do.
Interesting. Two other topics, and I think you briefly mentioned that pre-interview that you're really active on within capital variation is financial literacy and women empowerment. So, can you tell us a bit about the background on that? Why you came to really try and make a change in those two aspects, and actually, what are you implementing in that regard?
Sure. So I'm a woman from a basically I was born in Colombia in the 90s, and we were not the most, let's say, straightforward family, which was born out of wealth, etc. So we created everything. My mother, my father, both entrepreneurs. I saw a lot of things that I have traumas, when I was younger, and I saw a lot of things that I was never happy about, and I said that I have to do something about this. So I created. I think that's one of the biggest forces for me to build capital variation. I had the opportunity to emigrate to the United States. I had the opportunity to grow here, my company, to grow in the Middle East freely, and now I'm in the U.S. and something that some people could never dream of. Of course, my mother was the one that actually help us kind of like get out of here. And my father, and with obviously political programs, we were able to leave Colombia. But the reason why I created capital variation was to make sure that every woman that were from any emerging market, with a dream, was allowed to dream. And by me leading the way, or opening this, because they're basically ways to not only become who you are or what you want to do, but also empowering other women to help them to believe that they can do it. If I did it, anybody can, right? So, women empowerment has always been and would always be one of the biggest pillars for capital variation to exist. In the US, for example, I'm a professor at the BIBS, so Boston International Business School. I did take the program there where we can teach women and men how to create companies, how to expand the business. And we're being part of a few conferences where we are teaching women. We're basically telling those stories, how they can do what I did. But not only that, just if they see someone else doing that, you're the lead force. And my sister is also our CEO. She's an amazing woman. She has a big family, and she's also really, really happy to be in part of the company. And by doing this together, and combining our skill sets, she has different skill sets as me. She's in German region. She speaks German. She manages the DAC region, and all the relationships. I take over the America. So I think being a company run by two female leaders, it really helps, to propel economic growth and women empowerment anywhere you go.
Right. So leveraging past experiences and difficulty to actually help other people and kind of give back in a way.
Exactly, because you cannot just let your past rule who you can be. We had many stories that we can talk about that in another interview. But you could either take all the bad energy and all the bad experiences and all the suffering and all the everything that you suffered to, and then converting to like, I cannot do anything. My life is a mess. this was the history, or you take that and then you convert that and then you and energy and then propel what you really want to do and empower others while you're doing it, which is the fun part.
And so apart from the capital advisory and all the different things that you do within capital variation, a big aspect is organizing events. I mean, you came to London last week actually to do an event with a few companies and different family offices. So what's next? What are the next events coming up? If people want to join, what's the process? How can we get part of the capital variation movement in a way?
Sure. Yeah, I like that word actually. Capital variation movement. It's fun. Yeah. So, we have gathered so much data around the last 7 years. We've also identified really good companies, and we also identify how we can grow and integrate the network. And as I said, I've created capital variation to provide inclusion and diversification. So that's why we are putting together events every month. We're going pretty much everywhere around the world with the road shows. So our next gathering is going to be in Texas for very specific reasons as well. We want to be part of the Texas Stock Exchange as it's going to be created. It's already on the way. Another really good opportunity that we want to kind of take advantage of, but we're going to be doing events every month. So we've got planned Monaco, we've got planned obviously Texas, we've got planned another event in London, Mykonos, Dubai, Singapore, Brazil, Colombia. We've got a lot of things on the plate, but if you follow our website, there is a link that says 2026 events, and we're going to be updating that every month, every week, just to make sure that you can participate. Of course, this is predominantly for family offices, which is our bread and butter, and we work with sophisticated investors. But you also want to see stories of founders who are going to build the next Tesla. And, if we can support them and if we can be there for them, that's a platform that we have created in terms of economic growth, which is what we really advocate for, and financial literacy.
Interesting. We'll put all your links down the interview so people can reach you in a very efficient manner. Before we leave you, is there anything else maybe that you wish to touch on, maybe in relation to today's market cycle or the evolution of capital variation?
Yeah, I think we've done a pretty good job creating a platform of trusted investors and trusted entrepreneurs and founders. And I think collaboration has been one of like the biggest pillars for me to grow. And I think if we all can get collaborative and really support each other, the world can be a much better place. We need God right now more than any time in the history, and we need good people with good deeds, but at the same time we need to make money, right? So it's all embedded, it's all conjunctively working for the good of humanity. And if you're seeing this today, and if you're an entrepreneur, if you're just starting something, I've started just like you or anyone else here, and I made it. So I think if I can do it, you can do it. But in terms of also investors, if you're seeing this, know that we're working very hard to get companies the next level. So if you're an investor and want to connect us and have a conversation, I'm always going to be available for that with my team to grow together.
Well, thank you for coming in. It's been a real pleasure having you on.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, and we'll definitely do another interview when you're back in London or maybe in New York.
Or maybe we'll see you in Texas in our next gathering.
Why not? Sounds like a
Thank you.
good plan. Cheers.
Thank you.